Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year.
Let's move on then to a CNBC TV18 exclusive. Lupin is the first management on the show today. The stock has gained nearly around 91% in the last 1 year. Brokerages, well, they have a positive view on the stock. To discuss this and more, we have Mr. RAMESH Swaminathan, the Executive Director, Global CFO and Head Corporate Affairs of Lupin, who joins us on the show. Hi, Mr. Swaminathan, morning, and thanks so much for joining in on CNBC TV18. Wishing you the best in the coming calendar year. Well, one thing that I wanted to ask you was on pricing. Now, tell us what are the key trends that could emerge from the pharma space on pricing itself. Bernstein, for one, they have written a note. They believe that US generic pricing could remain favorable in 2024. Do you believe the same?
Well, at the outset, let me also wish you a very happy New Year, and thank you for having me on the show. You speak about pricing, for sure. In the last a few months, so to speak, pricing has been fairly steady out there. It's because of various reasons, I would imagine. The first is a lot of companies have been kind of shedding their portfolio, and as a result, in fact, there have been instances of shortages insofar as the American market is concerned. The second is essentially because of the fact that there have been rising interest rates. A lot of companies have also closed down. Factories have closed down and the like to kind of delever. And that actually meant that there has been a supply shortage again. And for that reasons, I think there has actually been a period of low price erosion, so to speak. Quarter on quarter, we saw, in fact, just about 1% price erosion. So hopefully this would stay for some time to come.
So just 1% price erosion. Mr. Swaminathan, hi, season's greetings to you, first of all. So to what extent are you expecting this price erosion to come down to?
No. So I was just saying between quarters, but if you look at, in fact, year on year, it's actually in the high, I would say low single digits, so to speak. It is certainly not in the same levels as possibly last couple of years, so to speak. It's come down dramatically. And of course, it doesn't necessarily mean that it could remain the same way, because the number of players in the American market is still pretty high. There are close to about 170 producers of generics across the globe. And for every molecule that you take, you could talk about between 20 to 30, competitors, so to speak. The number of, OAIs has been coming down quite a bit. Essentially the FDA been a lot more, they've been doing visits and the like, and that means that a lot of factories have been getting clearances. And of course, there are, of course, expedited approvals because of GDUFA in the recent times and so on. So for those reasons, whilst this period is, of course, a period which reflects, in fact, lower price erosion, it does not necessarily mean that this is going to be the way in the future as well. So it really is going to be a wait-and-see policy from all players.
Mr. Swaminathan, just to complete that point on the US market, everything that you're describing is so positive for Indian pharma companies, right? But we're running into an election. What does history tell us? I mean, if there is a change of guard at the White House, does that really impact the way policy shapes up? As you're saying, FDA, a more benign environment, the pricing pressure reducing that you spoke of. Is there any impact?
I would imagine not, because close to about 45% of the volumes for generics actually comes from India. And when you spell generics, it is all about affordable medicine. And from that perspective, I think no government can really, overlook the demands of this industry in that sense. And from that perspective, I believe, we'll be really agnostic, in fact, regime changes, so to speak. And I do hope that, given the fact that this particular price regime kind of continues for some time to come.
Good morning, sir. Thanks a lot for joining in. I want to ask you a little bit about the latest acquisition that you did. You purchased the portfolio from Sanofi of established products for about 90 crores or so. Can you tell us how have you funded this acquisition, and also want to understand what the acquisition strategy is for the company, say over the next couple of years? What are you looking at in terms of M&A?
This is really to kind of address white spaces in our overall, geographical presence, so to speak. There are, and we believe that this would be particularly of interest in Europe, so that's why we actually went in for this particular acquisition. Whenever there is actually a strategic gap, so to speak, in our overall portfolio, we've been addressing that with potentially, strategic buys, so to speak. And this policy will continue in the quarters to come also.
So this particular, acquisition that you've made, the sales have not been that great if you map the last couple of years. Any reason for that? And what do you expect could be the sales outlook over the next couple of years?
It's actually a low sales value, as you very well described. As I said, it is actually strategic, and it was available at a particularly attractive price insofar as we are concerned. And that's the reason why we actually went in for this, tactical buy, so to speak.
All right. Mr. Swaminathan, tell us about the trajectory of US sales, the generic sales out there. I'm looking at a couple of sell-side reports, and they're expecting $850 to $900 million in terms of US sales for the coming year. That's for FY25. When does this number hit $1 billion odd? Could that be a target?
Well, thanks for asking this question. So, Ian, whilst we began this year, we talked about, in fact, newer launches that you'd be bringing to the table. So we had Darunavir, and we actually brought in Spiriva, during the course of this year. There's a pretty impressive pipeline actually lined up for the US markets in the quarters to come as well. Over the last several years, we've been focusing on, in fact, kind of pivoting the entire portfolio to more complex drugs, which includes the entire respiratory portfolio. You're looking at, in fact, complex injectables and the like. We would be bringing all of those products into the market. The last couple of quarters have turned out to be pretty good, and going forward, given the kind of pipeline, so we have been, hitting the $200 million mark consistently over the last couple of, and we think that to be sustainable for the immediate future. There's, of course, spikes of volatility which could potentially be expected, given the market conditions and the like as well. But in a general sense, if we fast forward, I would expect close to about $300 million coming in from the respiratory portfolio, about $250 million coming in from potentially the complex injectables portfolio. There's, of course, the biosimilars that you'd be bringing to market shortly, in the quarters to come at least. And of course, there is the inline products as well. So for sure, I think over the next few years, we do expect to cross the $1 billion mark. And in fact, if you look at our MTP, fairly confident of, the numbers that you're speaking about in this period.
So sometime in FY26 then, that appears $250 million on a quarterly basis should be gettable.
Well, between the next 3 to 4 years, for sure.
3 to 4 years. Okay, $250 a run rate. Right now, 200 a quarter. Mr. Swaminathan, you mentioned a couple of, drugs. Just give us some more specifics on Spiriva and, how that's shaping up. And also, this GLP-1, 1S, beg your pardon, I don't know if I'm getting the terminology right, but everyone's talking about this. Apparently, diabetes and obesity, it's a combination, drug, and it seems to be a huge opportunity. Can you help us understand this? How big is it? How big could it be for you? Any numbers?
Yes, semaglutide is, of course, a very big hit in America because, of course, it's a diabetes product which got introduced. But a lot of this actually is being diverted for potentially, for obesity and the like as well. And this, of course, is a big problem in America. But I would imagine that there's indeed a problem in other parts of the globe also, given the fact that, rising consumption, rising life standards and the like, it is, of course, a very live issue. And to that extent, it certainly is going to be a very exciting opportunity for everybody who participates in this.
But any timelines, and what would your roadmap be? Since it's a huge opportunity, just some more color on how Lupin will want to capitalize on it, and when can we expect action on this particular drug through the course of 2024?
No, so we are also focusing on that. We are also working on that. And, I don't want to actually throw numbers and the like, but for sure, it's an opportunity that we would also like to grasp for India and potentially for other parts of the globe as well.
For the next couple of years, what do you think the margin trajectory for the company could look like? You have an exit rate, run rate on margins at about 18% for FY24. You've said that you're on track to do that. But do you have any more margin levers for FY25?
I can hear you. Hope you are able to hear me.
Yes, I'm able to hear you, sir. I was asking you about the margin run rate. I do know that you have an exit rate of 18% for FY24, but what are the margin levers as we move along?
When we actually opened the year, we did speak about the fact that the closing run rate, the margin could be about the 80% mark. We kind of crossed that in the second quarter itself. And we have been promising, in fact, successive quarters, margins would actually rise. I think we are well on course for that, because of the kind of products that we're launching in the American market. and of course the focus on looking at on cost reduction. There's of course, in fact, the sales force that we added to in the last quarter of the previous year. We expect that also to kind of increase in productivity and contribute going forward. So I would expect pretty good, sales in India, sales in America, and for sure, products in Europe like Foster, of course, which is doing fairly well. And there's of course some laggards, in terms of the Latin American market for us. But we expect that also to kind of work well for us in the days to come, because the factory that is closed in Mexico has been opened up again. So we are pretty confident about the future. There's of course the API story, which is kind of neglected for the last couple of years, given the syphilis war and lack of demand, and of course the pricing of Pen-G and the like. But things are actually stabilizing quite a bit. So I think that's kind of reflected in the overall pharma growth story.
But is there scope to rise beyond that 18%, or do you think that you will be in that range itself, both in FY24 and 25 in terms of margins?
I think there is a lot more scope. If you look at, in fact, the competition, it's well about 22, 23%. So I would like to target about 22% as core. And if there are good products coming up, it would lead to a spike by about 4 to 5 percentage points. So 22, 23 is going to be our immediate target.
Oh, all right. Impressive on that front then.
And when you say immediate, 20 to 23% margins being an immediate target, I mean, are we talking what, FY 25, 26?
That's a target, meaning, yeah, for sure, I'd be working towards that. And, I think you'll come to that position in the next few quarters.
Oh, okay.
Few quarters. Oh, that's
so
interesting.
no, as in you will set the band and the timeline over the next few quarters, or do you think you can actually hit 20% plus?
We have been, as you can very well see, getting our margins up in the last several quarters.
Yes.
It went up from the first quarter. So last quarter was 18.7. We believe that the increase would sustain in the immediate quarters to come as well. So that sets the base for the next year, and that's a different story.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm sure your shareholders will absolutely love the sound of that. Mr. Swaminathan, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. Great to have you on the show, and wish you a good 2024. Need to take a quick break. We'll come back on the other side, and then we get a conversation going with the SBI chairman, Dinesh.